What up, cucks? It's your boy the Hater up in this mug. And it's time for our NXT review because it's Tuesday. Alright, this is one of the worst episodes of NXT maybe ever. So without further ado, let's get to it. You know what I'm saying? The show starts out. We start out with Jordynne Grace, who is a TNA wrestler, versus someone named Stevie Turner. Right? This highlights the problems that WWE and NXT have with respect to female wrestlers, right? They just sent Lyra Valkyria and the business girl, whatever her name is, the one whose gimmick is she's a businesswoman. They send them to the main roster, but now it's like we still have a bunch of jobbers to replace them, and they're not going to ever have an opportunity in the main roster to become relevant because there's just too many women in the pipeline. Case in point, Jordynne Grace and Stevie Turner. Jordynne Grace wins with her finishing move. Nobody cares. You know what I'm saying? Next up, we have Shawn Spears, and he's talking to a bunch of people, and he's kind of doing this like, I'm a mentor type thing. Who knows, right? But he's going after Briggs now, Josh Briggs, and whatever, who cares? Like, I can't believe that this guy's still employed. I know he just came back, but it's like, why haven't they fired him yet? You know what I mean? Booker T is hosting a summit for the women's jobber title. So hold on a second. The women's NXT jobbers title. So this is like the least credible title in the history of wrestling, right? Because it's a mid-card women's title on NXT. Like, after this, the next title is the parking lot champion down at the U-Haul parking lot. But anyways, Booker T is talking about all these women. It involves Mia Yim, Fallon Henley, Jada Parker, Sol Ruka, Lash Legend, and I think the other one, there was another one, right? Did I count them all? Isn't there another one? Whatever, I forget her name. Who cares? Point is, nobody cares. They just talk, and nothing really happens. We get a little segment, with Thea Hale. She's gonna get ready for a match against some broad named Jasmine Nix, who I don't think I've ever seen before. Jasmine Nix beats Thea Hale. Nobody cared at all, right? So thus far, we're 3 or 4 segments, depending on how you count, into the show, and it's just been a bunch of women who have no distinguishable characteristics. I recently saw a interview. It was the Chris Van Vliet interview with Cena, and Cena was saying how a lot of people in NXT have distinguishable characters, and they don't. He's a liar. So there you go. Next up, we've got Tony D'Angelo, who has to settle for the NXT Heritage Cup. NXT now has 19 titles. One of them is the Heritage Cup against Damon Kemp, who is just a complete jobber. This guy's never gonna make it. They fired the real one, Gable Stevenson or whatever. Gable Stevenson, I think his name is, or is it Gable Stevenson? I think it's Stevenson. They fired him because he didn't really take to wrestling, because he's just a boring jobber. He's just not impressive. You know what I mean? I get that he's a real wrestler, but this is kind of the point. He's 6'1", 250, 260 maybe, right? He's a big boy, but he's not that big, right? And even though he would certainly beat up everybody on the roster, it's not even close. He would give Brock Lesnar a serious challenge. He'd probably beat up Brock Lesnar, if we're being honest, because this guy's he's a legit gold medalist, right? But the problem is he just doesn't feel like one, right? He would have a good chance against Brock. I still think Lesnar would win, honestly, because I think Lesnar is stronger, and he also can fight. But it'd be close, right? This guy would destroy Pete Dunne, you know what I mean? But it just doesn't feel like he could, right? He would destroy Braun Breaker, but it just doesn't feel like he could. So same thing, they got rid of this guy, but they kept what's his face, Damon Kemp, who I don't even know. I'm not even sure, to be honest, why they kept Damon Kemp, who is his brother. But I guess Damon Kemp was a little bit better, but not much, because he loses this match to Tony D'Angelo, 2 falls to 1. The NXT Heritage Cup should be reserved for William Regal's son, and any other the son of Finley, you know what I'm saying? The son of Dave Taylor, the son of these types of wrestlers, the son of Dean Malenko can go and wrestle for it if he has a son at some point. So it's not really very exciting. It's a stupid concept. It really just takes things out in the context of what's it called of NXT UK. It kind of made sense. You know what I mean? It kind of made sense because you have that situation where, you know what I mean, it's a little bit like European-y with these like, different rules. But now it has no purpose in this. Yeah, so there you have it. We've got like Finley's son. He's in NXT. Maybe he can wrestle for it. Who gives a rat's ass? Next up, we've got someone named Izzy Dame, who I didn't recognize, but the name sounds familiar. She wrestled Natalia. Natalia finally gets a win. I don't think this matters because if this match were happening on Raw, Izzy Dame would win, right? Natalia just gets like the occasional win on NXT, but then as soon as these girls are promoted to Raw, they just destroy Natalia, just like the businesswoman girl did. So nobody cares. Then we see Gallus, which is kind of taking the forefront in NXT right now. It's Gallus, like this is like the main thing in NXT is Gallus and All Ego Ethan Page. So they show footage of Gallus destroying Tyreek Igwe and Tyson DuPont and whooping their ass, right? It's just kind of silly because Gallus is just kind of small. You know what I mean? Like that's the problem with Gallus. Obafemi shows up and Wesley shows up as well, and Gallus whoop both their asses. But it's silly because Obafemi's bigger than both of them. Wendy Chu gets a vignette. For those that don't know, Wendy Chu is best known for her role as the Chinese demon that like hung out with Xia Li before Xia Li was released. Dante Chen shows up and like they has like a moment with fucking Lexis King. This is a good filler feud. Then we get a 6-woman match. Basically the good guys versus the bad guys of the women's match. You know what I mean? The mid-card title match that they're going to have at the next live event or whatever the hell they call them for NXT. So nothing actually happens there. Jada Parker, Mia Yim, and Sol Ruka win. Who cares, to be honest? It doesn't really matter. Nobody gives a flying fuck. And then we get another Eddie Thorpe vignette, which is very strange because, like, Eddie Thorpe has been around for, like, a minute, but it's like they treat him like he hasn't. Like, they're treating him as if, like, he's never been there, and which might as well be the truth because nobody cares about Eddie Thorpe. Eddie Thorpe is boring, Like, Eddie Thorpe represents everything wrong with wrestling. Like, he's just like a guy. He's like part Native American and he's proud of that and he should be good for him. But the problem is that's not entertaining, you know what I mean? And then we get a segment like the segment that closes the show. Ava Rain, aka The Rock's daughter, comes out. We got All Ego, Ethan Page, and Trick Williams, and basically like they just legitimize the fact that these guys are gonna have a feud. They sign a contract for Ethan Page. And there it is, right? It's just like, this is going to happen at some point. The good thing about it is that they're both big guys. The bad thing about it is that nobody cares at all, right? That's the problem right there, motherfuckers. Nobody cares at all about this match because at the end of the day, it's All Ego Ethan Page, who was a jobber. Think about this. He was a jobber in AEW. So I'm supposed to take him seriously as a threat to Trick Williams, who just beat Ilya Dragunov, who just beat, like almost a year ago, or a couple of years ago at this point, who beat Gunther. You know what I mean? It's the same thing. It's like, it's not going to work out. I feel like someone like Ethan Page, and quite honestly, someone like Trick Williams and Carmelo Hayes, like, if they're going to be in NXT, it's because they don't really expect them to do anything, right? Like, you see how these people are treated. Like, once in a while, they'll pull like a Drew McIntyre in NXT just to make a point, but the reality is what the reality is, right? Like, if you're Cody Rhodes, if you're AJ Styles, hell, if you're the Good Brothers when they got signed, you don't go to NXT. You go to Monday Night Raw or Friday Night SmackDown, right? They don't humiliate you by putting you through the ringer and having you go wrestle in NXT in front of a bunch of jobbers, right? So the career prospects, I think, of these people aren't that high. And I feel the same way about Ilya Dragunov, right? Like, he spent so much time in NXT and now, like, he's on Raw where it's just laughable, right? Like, because in NXT, you can kind of get by because there's a lot of Adam Coles and Bobby Fishes, but on the main roster, if you're Ilya Dragunov, like, they can't really, for example, let's say Ilya Dragunov starts a feud with Walter, right? You can't do, like, let's say a tag match, Walter and Ludwig Kaiser versus Ilya Dragunov and Sheamus, or Ilya Dragunov and Orton, right? Because then you're going to have Ilya Dragunov next to Orton, and he's going to look like Orton's child. You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense. So the sad state of NXT, in my opinion, is the worst it's ever been. I got no joy from watching this. It's just a complete rehashing of female wrestlers coming in and out, right? And like people are surprised when they don't achieve anything, right? Like you really think that Sol Ruka is gonna be like a big, well, maybe she is, but you really think that Lola Vice is gonna have a better career than, let's say, Shayna Baszler? This has Shayna Baszler written all over it. So with that being said, motherfucks, that's been your NXT review up in this piece.